Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Tuesday, August 25th, 2026, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside is going to be intense today, with a high of 101 degrees and a low of 72.7. Please remember to stay hydrated and find some shade if you are heading out. In our top stories, we are examining the Trump administration and their plans regarding mass visa revocations. We will also explore the national debate surrounding a potential return to aggressive wildfire suppression strategies. Beyond those segments, we have several other important stories to cover to ensure you are fully updated on the latest developments. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning. We're following a major immigration story this morning, one that could set a record. The Trump administration is preparing what would be the largest single mass revocation of visas in United States history. Our reporter Ethan has been tracking the details. Ethan, good morning. What exactly is the administration planning here?
Good morning, Grace. According to the Associated Press, the administration is getting ready to revoke the visas of up to 200,000 foreigners. These are people who've applied for or are currently seeking asylum status inside the U.S. Specifically, they hold business and tourism visas, known as B1 and B2 visas. Outlets like NPR, Deutsche Welle, and El Paso Matters have all filled in more of the picture since that first report.
200,000 people is a staggering number. Which visas are we talking about, and who typically holds them?
The plan targets B1 and B2 visas issued between 2016 and 2026. Those are the everyday travel visas most people never think twice about. A B1 covers short business trips, while a B2 covers tourism, medical care, or visiting family. So we're talking about people who came here legally for a defined short-term reason, and then later filed asylum claims once they were on U.S. soil.
So how did the government even identify these particular travelers?
That's a key part of the story. Internal State Department documents obtained by the Associated Press suggest the screening began after the State Department received data on asylum requests. That data came from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So essentially, one agency's asylum records became the roadmap for another agency's visa reviews. The State Department is expected to announce these revocations in the coming weeks, working in coordination with the Department of Homeland Security.
You mentioned that 200,000 figure. Is the government actually confirming it?
Not officially, no. While the AP reported the figure of 200,000, State Department spokesman Tommy Pigott declined to confirm a specific number. He said the process will be conducted on what he called a rolling basis. He also said the number of revocations, quote, remains dynamic, end quote. So the administration is leaving itself room to adjust as it goes, and the final tally could shift up or down.
For someone who loses their visa in this process, what happens next? Are they deported right away?
Not necessarily, and that's an important distinction. Officials speaking on condition of anonymity told the Associated Press that these revocations wouldn't automatically trigger immediate deportation. Instead, most people with pending asylum cases would be, in their words, recategorized. That means they lose their legal status as business or tourism travelers, but their asylum claims would still move forward. So it's a change in category, not an instant removal from the country.
Let's talk about the why. How is the administration justifying such a sweeping move?
The administration's core argument is that using a non-immigrant visa to then seek asylum is a way of getting around immigration law. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau laid this out on the social media platform X. He said the public is, quote, fed up with bogus asylum claims, end quote. He argued that asylum should not serve as a, quote, loophole, end quote. So they're framing this as closing a gap that they believe people have been exploiting.
Did Landau point to any specific example to make his case?
He did. Landau cited the case of a Colombian citizen who entered the U.S. on a tourist visa back in 2015 and then later applied for asylum. That's the exact scenario the administration says it wants to stop. And to prevent it going forward, there's a new requirement. Current applicants for B1 and B2 visas now have to prove they intend to return home. They also have to explicitly affirm that they will not apply for asylum once they arrive.
That sounds like a real shift for anyone applying now. Is this part of a bigger pattern?
It absolutely is. According to NPR and Deutsche Welle, this mass revocation fits into a much wider crackdown on immigration and visa issuance during President Trump's second term. We've seen enhanced vetting, including increased demands for social media histories. There are also new requirements for expensive bonds just to process a visa. And in some cases, the administration has outright banned visa issuance to citizens of certain countries.
You mentioned other revocations too. How many visas have already been pulled recently?
In the 18 months leading up to this announcement, the State Department revoked approximately 175,000 visas. Some of those went to individuals convicted or accused of crimes, ranging from drunken driving all the way to robbery. But others were pulled from people who spoke out publicly against U.S. policies, particularly regarding the Middle East. So the revocations have covered both criminal cases and, notably, political speech.
That free speech angle is striking. What about families, especially expectant mothers, coming to the U.S.?
There's a separate effort there too, often called a crackdown on birth tourism. That targets foreign pregnant women who travel to the U.S. to secure birthright citizenship for their children. The administration has repeatedly tried to end birthright citizenship altogether. But those efforts have been rejected by the courts, including the Supreme Court. So while the policy goal remains, the legal path to actually ending birthright citizenship keeps hitting a wall.
And I understand cost is becoming a bigger barrier as well?
That's right. The administration has been tightening legal immigration pathways through new fees, and some of them are quite costly. Certain work visa applicants now face these added financial hurdles. So even for people trying to come through entirely lawful channels, the price of entry is climbing. Taken together with the vetting and the bonds, it's a much steeper climb than it was even a couple of years ago.
How are rights groups responding to all of this?
Critically and loudly. The administration maintains these measures are necessary to strengthen domestic security. But rights groups, as reported by Deutsche Welle, argue the crackdown infringes on due process and free speech rights. They also contend these policies create an unsafe environment. And they warn it raises the risk of racial profiling for ethnic minorities, which is a serious concern for many communities.
So is any of this actually being challenged in court right now?
Yes. Several aspects of the administration's immigration strategy are currently facing ongoing legal challenges. We already saw that with birthright citizenship, where the courts, including the Supreme Court, pushed back. So it's very likely that this new mass revocation could face similar scrutiny once it's formally announced. The legal fights here are far from over, and that's something worth watching in the weeks ahead.
Let's come back to timing. When could people actually start feeling the effects of this?
The State Department is expected to make the announcement in the coming weeks. So from today, August 25th, 2026, we're likely just a short stretch away from the first formal moves. Remember, Tommy Pigott said this will happen on a rolling basis. That means people probably won't all be notified at once. It could unfold gradually over time, case by case.
For the roughly 200,000 people potentially affected, what's your best read on their immediate situation?
Most important thing to understand is that losing a visa here doesn't necessarily mean losing your place in line for asylum. Those pending claims still get processed. But these individuals would no longer hold that business or tourism status while they wait, so their footing becomes far more uncertain. And with legal challenges brewing, a lot could still change, depending on how the courts respond.
Before we go, remind us why this particular action stands out historically.
What makes this notable is the sheer scale. If it goes through as described by the Associated Press, it would be the largest single mass revocation of visas in United States history. We've seen crackdowns before, and we've seen that 175,000 figure over the past 18 months. But a single action touching up to 200,000 people at once is unprecedented. That's why so many outlets are watching this so closely.
Really important reporting this morning, Ethan. Thank you for breaking it all down for us.
Happy to, Grace, and we'll be tracking that State Department announcement closely as it develops.
That was our reporter Ethan. We'll bring you updates as this story moves forward. Welcome back. Our next story digs into a century-old wildfire strategy that some fear is making a comeback. Chloe's been following this closely. Chloe, good morning.
Good morning, Grace. It's a fascinating and honestly worrying debate. At the center of it is something called the 10 a.m. rule, a wildfire suppression strategy from the early 20th century. There's real concern it could return, and the timing couldn't be more urgent given this year's fire season.
So let's start there. What exactly was the 10 a.m. rule?
The U.S. Forest Service first mandated it back in 1933. The idea was simple but rigid. Any wildland fire had to be extinguished by 10 a.m. the day after it was reported. It came directly out of a catastrophe called the Big Burn of 1910. According to CalMatters, that fire along the Montana-Idaho border scorched over 3 million acres, destroyed 5 towns, and killed at least 85 people.
That's staggering. So the fire basically shaped the agency itself?
Exactly. New York Times reporter Tim Egan, cited by CalMatters, notes the Forest Service essentially owes its existence to the aftermath of the Big Burn. That trauma drove decades of policy. The agency became almost singularly focused on stamping out every fire as fast as humanly possible. And for a long time, that seemed like the responsible thing to do.
But I take it there was a catch to putting out every fire?
There was a big one. It's called the Wildfire Paradox. A Rocky Mountain Research Station scientist named David Culkin described it in a 2013 article in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The idea is that trying to eliminate all fires actually guarantees even more damaging ones down the road. By stopping natural low-intensity fires, the agency let dead timber and fuel pile up over the years.
And that buildup becomes fuel for something much worse?
Precisely. All that accumulated fuel leads to higher intensity, fast-growing wildfires that are nearly impossible to suppress. Egan links this buildup to the 1988 Yellowstone fires, which burned 1.4 million acres, and to various Idaho fires in the late 1990s. So the very strategy meant to protect the land ended up setting the stage for bigger disasters.
So when did officials finally realize this and change course?
Fire researchers started catching on in the 1960s when they began experimenting with let-burn strategies. The Forest Service modified the 10 a.m. rule in 1971 and then officially abandoned it by 1978. So for decades, the thinking shifted toward letting some fires play their natural role. That's what makes the current debate so striking, because there's now a push in the other direction.
Let's get to that. What's driving the return to aggressive suppression?
A lot of it is political. In June of last year, 2025, President Donald Trump issued an executive order titled Empowering Common Sense Wildfire Prevention and Response. He cited the devastation of the January 2025 Los Angeles wildfires as evidence that state and local governments simply can't respond fast enough to major blazes. That order set the tone for a broader shift back toward full suppression.
Did that order actually name the old 10 a.m. rule?
Not the final version, but the drafts are telling. According to reports from CalMatters and the Montana Free Press, draft versions of something called the Fix Our Forests Act called for full suppression of all wildfires. Some drafts explicitly mentioned returning to the 10 a.m. rule. Firefighters cited in those reports suggested no one was, quote, dumb enough, end quote, to use that specific phrasing in the final order. But they say the operational goal is still just as aggressive.
And what did the Forest Service chief say about all this?
On July 22nd, just about a month ago, Forest Service Chief Tom Schultz testified before the House Subcommittee on Forestry and Horticulture. He told lawmakers his agency remains committed to prioritizing, quote, aggressive initial attack, end quote, this year. He said every fire now has a full suppression strategy. Schultz argued that keeping fires small is essential for protecting communities and firefighters, and for saving funding too.
On the surface, that sounds reasonable. So why the pushback?
because critics say it ignores the very lesson that led the agency to abandon the rule decades ago. Keeping every fire small in the short term lets fuel loads keep building. And there's also a big structural change happening alongside the policy. The Trump administration has restructured federal firefighting entirely by creating a new entity called the U.S. Wildland Fire Service.
Tell me more about that new agency. What did it pull together?
It consolidated crews from 4 Interior Department agencies. Those are the Bureau of Land Management, the National Park Service, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So you're taking firefighting resources that were spread across those agencies and centralizing them. The goal is a more unified response, but it also shifts who gets to make key decisions.
And who holds that decision-making power now?
This is a crucial change. Brian Fennessy, the director of the U.S. Wildland Fire Service, has indicated that federal officials focused on forest health can no longer make the final call on whether to let a fire burn. That authority now rests with what's called the, quote, fire side, end quote, meaning the suppression officials. So the people thinking long-term about the land no longer have the final say.
How are experts reacting to that shift in authority?
With real alarm, they're calling this a dangerous, quote, year-to-year Band-Aid, end quote. Bill Ave, president of the National Association of Forest Service Retirees, has described divorcing wildfire from the land as a, quote, policy failure, end quote. And there's a striking estimate about what full suppression would even require.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Bobby Scopa, vice president of Grassroots Wildland Firefighters, estimated that full suppression would require an additional 30,000 to 40,000 federal firefighters. And even with all those extra people, she said it would likely still fail. So critics argue you'd be pouring enormous resources into a strategy that can't actually deliver what it promises.
Meanwhile, we're in the middle of the 2026 fire season. How bad is it right now?
It's serious. A collaborative report by the Salt Lake Tribune, Montana Free Press, Cal Matters, the Colorado Sun, the Nevada Independent, and Wildfire lays out the crisis. On the human toll, 2 helicopter pilots, 4 firefighters, and a contractor have died in Oregon, Utah, and Colorado. That's a heartbreaking reminder of just how dangerous this work is.
And the fires themselves, how large are they?
Some are massive. The Widemouth 2 fire in Utah has burned nearly 130,000 acres. And the Aspen Acres fire in Colorado consumed over 50,000 acres and destroyed up to 200 structures. These aren't isolated incidents either. They reflect the kind of high-intensity blazes that experts warned would become more common.
Are firefighters getting the resources they need to keep up?
That's part of the strain. The U.S. has been at Preparedness Level 5 since July 18th, which is the highest level of resource commitment there is. Yet requests for equipment often go unanswered, and that's forced a reliance on international help. So even as the policy pushes for aggressive suppression, the resources on the ground aren't always there.
So where does this leave us, big picture?
Critics argue there's a real irony here. By prioritizing aggressive initial attack and full suppression, the government may actually be increasing the risk of, quote, megafires, end quote, across California and the West. That's because suppressing everything lets fuel loads climb to historic, unsustainable levels. It's the wildfire paradox all over again, just decades later. The worry is that we're repeating a mistake we already learned from once.
A really important story, and one we'll clearly be watching as the season continues. Chloe, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. Trade tensions are shifting into high gear as President Trump threatens to put the brakes on imports, with 50% tariffs on Canadian vehicles, auto parts, trucks, and steel starting January 1, 2027. Prime Minister Mark Carney is not idling, announcing that Canada will reveal its own retaliatory tariffs this Tuesday, August 25th, while pivoting toward more targeted retaliation to shield domestic workers. Things are getting truly shocking in Ontario, where Premier Doug Ford says everything is on the table, including cutting off electricity and critical minerals used for United States military aircraft. President Trump told Canadian leaders to fall in line or face consequences far worse than these tariffs, while Trade Representative Jameson Greer says domestic politics are driving the breakdown. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne and 3 other ministers will provide details on worker supports Tuesday morning. The National Weather Service says more than 80 million people are currently sizzling under extreme heat warnings or heat advisories this week. This heat dome is making a huge impact in the south-central United States and will expand into the southwest by midweek, with highs exceeding 100 degrees in the southern plains and lower Mississippi Valley, and potentially hitting 110 degrees or more in the southwest. Southern California is feeling the burn with an extreme heat warning from Tuesday, August 25th at 10 a.m. through Friday, August 28th at 8 p.m. Palm Springs is expected to reach 112 degrees, while the Inland Empire and San Fernando Valley could hit 110 degrees. With overnight lows 8 to 12 degrees above normal, bodies cannot cool off, and a red flag warning is in effect for mountain communities. A new study published Tuesday, August 25, 2026, in the British Medical Journal is tackling the head-on reality of brain trauma in football. Research from Mass General Brigham, Boston University, and the Concussion and CTE Foundation suggests that at least 25% of former NFL players who died between 2016 and 2021 suffered from chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Lead author Dr. Daniel Dineshvar analyzed 878 deceased players. Of the 235 who donated their brains, 215 were found to have the disease. Dr. Dineshvar warns that the bulk of these impacts happen during youth, high school, and collegiate play, urging a reduction in contact practices. The NFL responded by stating they are continuously striving to make the game safer through concussion reduction strategies. Cal Matters is taking a shot at UCLA in a lawsuit filed Monday, August 24, 2026, after the university failed to provide detailed records on payments to Division I student-athletes. This legal battle focuses on name, image, and likeness payments for sanctioned promotions, following public records requests sent last fall to 16 university campuses. For the 2025 to 2026 academic year, UCLA and UC Berkeley both spent approximately $20,500,000 on athletes, with UCLA paying 229 players. San Diego State paid at least $8,600,000, with over 60% going to football. UC Riverside paid about $200,000 to men and $70,000 to women. CEO Neil Chase is preparing a similar suit against UC Berkeley, while spokesperson Stet Holbrook says the university will respond in court. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini Pro 3.1, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.